by having a lot of people here today, we hope to solicit new ideas, concerns, objections, insights, any of those things that will help us become better as a country club. This is the basic agenda. Like I told you, we're going to look back at some of the trends from the last 5 years. We're going to take a snapshot of what the club is today, and then we'll look at basically a 5-year financial forecast based on some concepts the board has been working on. So as we look back over the last 5 years, I want to just highlight a couple of the landmark events. So in 2014, we went to an all-inclusive dues structure. And actually, as you look down here at the dues trend, you'll see that in 2013, we were $210 dues for an equity membership. When we went to all-inclusive, that went to $425 in 2014. And that continued for a couple of years. And there was kind of a promotion that was to the membership that if we grew 30 members, those dues would be reduced, and that actually transpired. Now the numbers that you see here as far as equity memberships are at a point in time, and that point in time is at the end of the fiscal year, which is September 30th. So these don't reflect averages. These are our membership on that date, except for what we are today at 200. So the other thing that, one of the other big landmark events from my perspective was getting off-premise catering to basically outsource our food service and event services and be kind of our, for lack of a better term, our social operator, our social services operator here at the club. What you'll notice here in the trend line is that when we added off-premise catering and Justin's team, we basically overnight more than doubled our social membership. We all have sensed the impact that that has from a physical standpoint, but I'm going to later on show you what a financial impact that's had on the club, especially as we've continued to grow that through 2018 to 245 members. Now that is as of today. The 2017 number was as of September 30th again. We've actually tried to balance from a board how aggressively we grow that membership. So it's on a different slide and we'll get to it, but last year in 2017 we actually raised the social membership fee to $150 annually. That was a 50% increase, hoping to curb some of that rapid growth we were seeing, and we saw a little slowing, but we still have significant demand for our social memberships there. Probably the biggest landmark event was the restructuring of the debt. So Brett Hughey, Pete Goebel, and the board, really before I was on in 2015, negotiated a restructuring, a buyout, whatever you want to call it, with Bank of Utah, where we had a debt to Bank of Utah for the mortgage of $2.9 million. And through negotiation and some goodwill on the part of Bank of Utah, we were able to put on top of that some very goodwill from a number of investors. I think every one of those are members of this club. Basically, we're able to buy that note from Bank of Utah for $2.9 million. So as you look at the financials, you'll see how important that basically $1 million of debt forgiveness is to the club. Really, as you look at the numbers, without that, we would be in a significantly different place than we are today. So remember that as we look at this, that we're fortunate to have had that done. One other thing I just want to point, actually two other things. Trends, one that has the board's attention in a concerning way, and another trend that is in a very positive way. So if you look at the honorary membership as they've gone along here, we couldn't find the numbers of the honorary memberships in our records if it even existed prior to here. Is that when it started? Probably so. But we continue to see an increase, and based on the demographics of the club, we foresee that continuing to grow. We've actually added these 5 basically have all happened this spring, the 5 additional honorary members. So they brought in somebody that basically bought an equity membership, replaced themselves, and they go to the honorary status to do that. This number right here, 26, represents about 13% when you compare that with our equity membership. If our equity membership stays at about 200 where we are today, we continue to basically, each time we add an equity member and an equity member turns honorary, it's really like we're only adding half an equity member. So just keep that in mind, that this is something the board's focused on, concerned about, and we'll keep its eye on and figure out how we're going to manage that program going forward. Important to see here that over the last number of years, I believe it was Peter and Lance Lyons from past boards that kind of conceptualized corporate memberships and put an effort into it. And this is in 2015 is when the ICON membership was signed. And then in 2016, they added a member. ICON added an additional member to their corporate membership. In 2017, so this number, the 6 that joined there were, I believe they were 5 Inabar, we counted them in 2017, and 1 additional ICON. And then just this week, we signed Adams Financial, which brought in 4 additional corporate memberships there. Corporate memberships are important. There's a couple of things. They pay upfront at the start of their membership. It's also a minimum of 4 memberships that come as part of that. We can get them in chunks. So with both Dean and Eric, Dean with Inabar, and really Eric had a relationship with Eric Skinner had a relationship with Adams Financial down at Logan River Golf Course. Scheduled a meeting up here with Dean and himself, presented a proposal. They were able to work out the details in a way that really sold the value of the country club to Adams Financial. So the corporate membership is something that we're asking Dean as the GM, the board, as well as members to keep in mind for those, your businesses you do that you associate with. Keep those in mind and get them in front of Dean, because the country club really is a good sell to those corporations that are looking for ways to benefit their employees. So this is something that in 2013 was the last assessment that went out to the membership, and it was for approximately $1,000 per equity membership. It was in the 900s, but that was the last time there was an assessment. So this is some of the, I guess, more recent projects. I may have eliminated, may have forgotten something along there, or they happened before I was really involved. The cart pass, the tree trimming, the flooring, the paint, the grounds equipment, the new carts, they're all pretty minor upgrades when you look at it, from my perspective. So the cart pass is something that you've all noticed out there. The cart paths are in a number of places in bad shape, but Paul does have the ability to fix some of those. We've got a few cart paths that he's redone, and the performance of the path is fine. The aesthetic of the path, so-so. The time to completion of the bad parts, not very good. But this to me represents kind of how we're operating as a club. We're figuring out a way to kind of just get by. And that's what the cart pass is. The tree trimming, so had an opportunity with an arborist that was kind of at a downtime of their season. We got, I think it was $3,500 worth of arborist work for the trees, and we had to focus that on 5 trees. So there were a couple out here, and then the trees behind the range, and that's all we got. So minimal impact, minimal expense. The flooring that you've seen up here in the carpet, that was all done in trade. So a pretty minimal capital expense there. The new carts, we basically just rolled our lease over, and you probably all had a chance to experience those. A couple of things that are happening, and this really should be kind of in the looking forward, but I wanted to tie it together with the addition of Eric Skinner as the assistant pro. You probably all got a relationship with Danny in the pro shop. She's going to be leaving us. She's going on to her real career to be a teacher. So at some point this summer, we will be losing Danny, and we don't have a plan to replace that position. And we've hired Eric Skinner. He started in February. I'm going to talk a little bit more about the board's process of making that decision as we go through this presentation. So as you look back over the last, and really from my perspective, the last 3 years, the time that I've been on the board, the financially planning was primarily based on the hope, assumption, whatever you want to call it, that we were going to have membership growth. For one reason or another, we have failed to do that. We've run incentive programs, promotions, all sorts of things to try and, public days where we invite them up, open houses. And we do get incremental bumps when we do that. But typically what we see as soon as their time commitment is up, a large percentage of those are leaving the club. But when the discount time is over, they haven't found the value in the club to stay. Now that's not a global statement. There are certainly people that stay based on their experience here. But when we see the numbers drop in the fall, it generally coincides with the expiration of the promotional times, and so we just have not done a great job as a board, as a leadership group, as a membership, and it's everybody that's responsible for that. We've continued to run a very lean operation, managing expenses. You've just seen that we are not spending lavishly on any major improvement projects. At this point, we're dependent, and we're also grateful for the non-dues revenue that we generate here at the club. So I've broken these out just on really the two main providers of outside revenue, non-dues revenue at the club. And one is outside golf events. So we're going to have, and Dean and I talked about this, there's a list of about 16 events scheduled throughout the year. More than half of those are actually organized by our own members. They love the club. They're bringing their event here to the club. A few of those are UGA events. There are very few with, I think there's basically 2 events that are coming in that are not related to this club, to the members of this club. As a board, we actually went to Dean, and Dean said, I can bring in more tournaments. I can bring in more outside events if that's what you want me to do. And a few months ago as a board, we actually discussed it and said, yeah, let's be smart about how we do it. So we looked at the least used times by members, and they were Mondays, Mondays, Thursdays, and Saturday afternoons. Those were going to have the least amount of impact on our membership. So all of those events that we've talked about are really happening at those times. And they'll bring in about $40,000 in revenue. Saying that brings in some inconvenience for the equity members, and we get that. We understand that it is. The board made the decision that for what we're getting out of it, we need to make that decision. Social members and their spend really at the bar is all we see. But we also get a lot of room rentals from those social memberships. Probably the largest percentage of room rentals and events held here are by social members. So that leads to catering as well. The social membership and what I would call the off-premise effect on the club is a top-line revenue number of about $150,000. Now, saying that, I understand that it does create some inconvenience and pain for the members. Sometimes you have to have a reservation to eat. You can't walk in and find a table. But if you look at what that pain means, it's $190,000, and right now, that's equal to 38 equity members. So we could do away with that, but would have to replace them with 38 people who are willing to join the club and be equity members. So the board looks at it that way, and as we're managing on such a lean operation, when we are failing to grow our membership, we're looking for the least impactful ways to grow our revenue. And that's the decision we have made as a board at this point, to fill the gap where we aren't growing our membership. And as you saw from our list, we've really limited all of our capital expenses to necessities or things that we could get in trade that were non-cash, where we basically let people become members. If they'll redo our floor, we give them a year membership. I'm going to run through these quickly, then I'll talk about each one individually. So we've got the Canyon Connector Trail. The last time we talked, you probably didn't know about the Waterline Project. So I'll bring you up to date on that. We'll talk about the goat hole restorations, the maintenance building roof. You may have seen people out there yesterday and today actually replacing the roof on Paul's shop. Cart Pass will be ongoing. We continue to try and figure out our social membership levels. We did try and curb that, like I said, by raising the dues to $150. And then balancing outside events, I touched on that. And then one of the things that we're going to do is we're actually, the back tee on number 2, for those of you who played there, very small. There's really one teeing area. Hard to keep that as even a functional tee. But with what we got out of fill from the number 14, the excess topsoil, we're actually going to grow that tee and make it a real practical, usable, long-lasting tee back there. And Paul and his crew will be doing that work. So the Canyon Connector Trail. I know a number of you came to the meeting with the city when the mayor was here and the engineers, and so the Connector Trail basically runs from 15th East all the way down right along the highway to First Dam at the tunnel. At the time the city came, they were actually asking us to run that trail through part of the property we leased from the university. As part of that, we let the city know that the only way we would participate if they considered our concerns. And one being that they provide some sort of protection for our parking lot so that it didn't become the de facto trailhead. And we also asked for some safety features through this area. Well, that added cost to their project. They ultimately stopped negotiating with us and decided to run the trail in the UDOT right-of-way, which they have every right to do. We knew that was a risk going in, but we didn't want to aid them in putting that trail in without getting something for the club in return. And then one day Whitaker comes to us and says, we can't continue to, Whitaker's the contractor, so we've got a problem down here. We can't continue to build this trail without getting onto your property. So after a number of meetings with Whitaker and with the city, we agreed to let them in certain areas encroach onto our property temporarily. It's already been done. You may have noticed a little extra cut, a little bit higher for safety reasons for Whitaker. But in exchange, the city is now going to be putting this fence in along the parking lot. So thanks to Paul and Dean and Heather really in getting that negotiated. So for a little bit of temporary, really what I wouldn't consider pain, because all of the extra encroachment is actually off the greened playing surface. It's just onto the side hill that happens to be on our property. Problem number 2 for the city and Whitaker is that right through here in this trail, where the university thought their water line was here, is actually running right under the retaining wall for the trail. And they can't build the trail in that way. So the current status on that is this blue line represents the proposed water line alignment for the university to move their water line. It's still in development, but I want to tell you what we've done from our side. So we took our university lease and all of the easements to an attorney to have them review that and determine what our rights were as really leaseholders from here down and property owners from here. Because we own this, we lease this. The attorney's opinion was that we had marginal legal standing to stop it from happening. And to do that, it would mean basically being in court with the university in Logan City, fighting them on a project that they've already invested, I'm guessing, $300,000 on. We have a long-term relationship with the university, so when the university was involved, we became more open to the discussion. On top of that, the university already has easements through here, so our property, they can do that. On our leased property, there's a provision in the lease that allows the university to repair, replace, take care of water lines. So that kind of removes our legal stance. The attorney said you do, however, I believe, have some practical leverage. And that is that they're going to be obligated to restore and replace and do those things. And the university wants to have a long-term relationship with you. So why don't you think of figuring that this project is going ahead, what will make it okay for you? So we've put a proposal back to the city and the university at this point, and the engineer and Whitaker with some of our concerns. They would like to start this project on May 7th. At this point, they are still planning to do so. For us, that's bad. We're right in prime time, recruiting weddings, starting to play golf, all of those things. So we've asked them these are asks at this point. We have not had the response back. Now, the majority of the parties have said that everything we've asked for is very practical. We've asked for them to do the work basically from 10 at night to 9 in the morning. And for really no sign of work, really. The ditch to be filled or covered, all of that, all equipment will be removed in that time frame. We've also asked them to maintain access for the tunnel crossing at all times. They did say that at times for a period of time when it's curing here, they will pour half of it, leave the other half open, pour the other half, because depending on the mix, it's going to take up to 7 days, I think, for it to actually cure where they're going to be comfortable. There are a number of other things, but our ask for our convenience, to consider our schedule if we have a wedding event planned to not start work until 11 or 12 o'clock that night. Our ask for the inconvenience, the being unsettled for what they are saying is a 4 to 6 week project, is that we get some sort of agricultural vegetative plan from the university's landscape engineering department that basically gives us a vegetative type barrier here, the full length along the south side of our clubhouse down to the access road. Sound barrier, safety for the hikers, protect us from liability, and that's what we're waiting to see back from them. And that's, as of yesterday, they're still working on some stuff with UDOT, but the engineer thought that certainly May 7th was still their target date. We'll keep you informed as that goes ahead, but if it does, know that we're fighting for the membership here to get the best thing that we can out of it, just like we did with Logan City. So hole 14 restoration, Paul called Dean today, mid to late May to be on 14. And I don't know if Dean had anything later. So we had a little incident up there just after the sod was laid. A cart got up there, pulled that off. Paul and his crew spent about an hour getting it back in place. Ultimately, we lost maybe 12 hours of setting of that turf. Not a major deal, but it certainly raised concerns about us rushing people out there for convenience. We've got to look at this as kind of a long-term plan, and to give up an extra week now probably saves us and gets us a product we're going to be happy with in the long run. As a reminder on this, as you go up and see what this looks like, the alternative, which we would have had no say in, was along the left side of the fairway where the old water line ran, would have the same scar on the left half of the fairway and would be without any of those trees along the canal. 15T restoration. Some of you might be wondering why it's not rebuilt yet. Well, we've had a little bit of time simply because of the 14 project to really evaluate a number of different options from a cost and practicality standpoint. So to rebuild this wall as it existed is an $18,000 to $20,000 job. With the block, I think it's 8 feet of block, 8 feet of block. As of right now, from our financial standpoint, we're probably looking at having what we had, and it's probably about $20,000. The alternative We're meeting with somebody tomorrow to talk about that, see if it is practical. Some of the bids we've had for the vertical wall are at about $70,000. At this point, we don't have the financial flexibility to do that, but if somebody has a solution that works, then we'll certainly look at it. This also will be, our goal is to have this playable when 14 opens. Number 16, I don't know if we've talked about this before, but basically 16T, because of the limited teeing area there as well over time, it was really uneven. I believe it was really bad up where the red tees were. I don't know if anybody can comment on that. And I want to just kind of point out that one of our members, Mike Lichty, does this kind of stuff for a living, but he made it possible for us to do this without a financial outlay. This wasn't something we could do. We wanted to try and improve our course where we could, and Mike may have even been the suggestion that we do that, but he really got that done for us, so we want to thank Mike and his crew, whoever did that. But that will be, it's really ready to mow and could be played today if we were playing then, if we were ready to play all of those holes. Maintenance shop roof, we've touched on this. We're basically getting 75% of the roof redone there. Got a number of bids, looked at a number of products, ultimately made what we felt like was the best long-term decision for the club, and that's going to cost about $40,000. This was taken yesterday morning, so they wanted to start this about a month ago, but they wanted to have about 7 days of clear weather before they started pulling the old roof off. So they finally got to it this week. All right, our current membership numbers. So we've got 200 equity members, 26 honorary, 21 corporate, and 245 socials. We've talked a little bit about what that means to us today. We're going to be talking really around that 200 number as we look at our 5-year plan. Basically, what I want to show here is that if you look at our expenses, we continue to run very lean and actually reducing our expenses. For the majority of those years, 2017, we had a little bump. But this is our projected expenses for 2018. So we continue to drive cost out of our operation, and we do that because we don't have the finances to do otherwise. We just continue to cut and cut and cut. And that's kind of the trend that you see there. This year we'll actually burn through about $60,000 of cash reserves. As you dig into the numbers, primarily you're going to see that as to our budget, we didn't budget for that. The maintenance building roof, the T rebuild, and really we dropped significantly in membership over the winter. We got down to 192 at one point in the winter. And we've added, it sounds like 8, right? But every time we add a member, somebody has gone honorary, so we lose a member. So the number doesn't truly reflect it. I think we've added 12 or 13 this spring is the best number that I can give you tonight. But we will burn through a little more cash than we had hoped to. And unless we see a significant membership growth, and we hope to see some membership growth, we aren't banking on it, we're going to burn through some of the cash reserves that we had. I want to talk about some of the challenges that I foresee and the board foresees for the next 5 years. There is a large demand for golf in this valley, but we have a lot of great golf here. Logan River Golf Course, Birch Creek Golf Course, there's a lot of ways to experience golf here. What we sell and what you are part of is the country club experience, and we want to continue to deliver that at a high level. And we're going to try to show you how we hope to do that across the next 5 years. So anyway, equity members, we really feel like we're hovering at 200 members. We've got a couple of big things coming. The mortgage balloon payment is due in 2025. The balance on that is going to be $1.6 million. So, of course, the options is just to pay it off in 5 years. So if we can come up with $1.6 million, we'll do that. Likely we'll refinance it. But if we have a strong financial run to there, refinancing that will be much simpler. We'll be able to shop that around as opposed to begging for somebody to take that loan. Also the irrigation system. So, and you know, there's been comments from members who've been here for a long time that they've been hearing about the irrigation system for decades, and we haven't had any problems yet. So why should we plan on one now? I get that. I get it. We actually met with an irrigation engineer who wouldn't give us a ballpark price on what it would cost to redo our irrigation. He said it would cost us $25,000 to design the irrigation system, and at that point we would find out how much it would cost when we bid it out. But even worse than that is a third of our system, although all of it is obsolete, a third of our system is what is called hydraulic. They no longer manufacture parts for hydraulic irrigation systems. The only way we have managed to keep a third of our system running over the last 2 years is that when a small golf course in the Ogden area went out of business, they sold all of their irrigation and it was hydraulic. And I think it was either Randy or Paul had the foresight to purchase all of that. So if we had a major problem today, we would really be financially capable of dealing with that without major assessments to the membership. This is actually our projected finish for the year, and as we pointed out, looks like we'll burn through about $60,000 in cash. I actually want to go, unless somebody wants to look at these details, the next slide really, to me, boils down this whole conversation. So if you look at 2018, our top line revenue is about $1.2 million. All right, expenses, you got it. A little more, $60,000 more than $1.2 million. And at the end of the year, we project to have $90,000 cash on hand. So as we talked about this, and this is really something that I've tried to scramble my brain around the whole time I've been on the board. Is there a price that grows the membership enough to get us to, say, 1.4? Well, the price at 200 members is in the $600 range, right? Something like that. I ran the spreadsheets, and or at 200 members. So how low do we have to go, and how many members do we have to have? Well, if we max out our membership at 400, it certainly changes the experience here as the country club. And that number can be in the 200s to get there. But what do we do in the time frame between as we grow those 200 members, and will we get them at $200, at $200, $250 a month? That's the challenge. How do you cover the loss from the current members while you grow the 200? It's really an impossible task without a huge cash reserve to fund you while you do that. I looked at the trend, and we really hover right around 200. And in my mind, right now what the market is telling us that we're at 200. The demand for our club is at about 200. We've got 200 people that see the value in the club. A lot of them are here tonight. That's all of you. That's me. What we're going to ask is that in 2019, this is a proposal. Get that. Nothing's voted on. This is conceptual. This is the idea to show you what we're hoping to achieve in 5 years. So these numbers basically reflect that we operate the club as we have been, 1% increase in expenses, 200 equity members. We're going to increase dues on this model by $10 a month per member in 2019, and additionally $10 in 2020, ending at $395 in 2020. Continue to control expenses. In this, we've got no unforeseen capital expenses, so if our irrigation system blows and we lose another tee, that's an example of the unforeseen that could hit us. And then club operations, I put this in here, meaning outside events, social, looking for the best deals, austerity. But if we can show a financial performance like this, there will be lenders that will be comfortable partnering with us and financing that. And we won't be necessarily relying. Now, it might be the same investor group. That might be what it is. But we will have options that we don't have today. If we get to a point where the irrigation system is no longer manageable, we feel like that number right there would cover the cost to replace the hydraulic portion of our irrigation system. No, it's not ideal, but really the reason I wanted an aggressive effort from the board to get everybody here tonight was to tell this story so that your expectations are at least based in the truth and the reality of what we're facing.